Zazie Beetz. You co-star in Atlanta as Van, who is raising a child with Ern, played by Donald Glover. And the show is currently airing its second season, but it's such a unique, unorthodox show. So what did you think about it when you were first making it in season one?
I thought that it was it was interesting because it was definitely a very small kind of family. Not many people knew about it. Not many people were working on it, except for Donald already sort of had a following, so he had sort of like a niche who were aware of the show. But none of us really thought that it would blow up in the way that it did. I remember talking to the director one of the last days shooting, where we were like, soon it's not going to be ours anymore. But I didn't expect sort of the awards runs we've been making and, the kind of impact it ended up having, which has been wonderful. But what was nice was going back to the second season, it kind of came back to feeling very familial. Most of the crew came back. And so it really, we were a group of people that we were already comfortable with working together and who we, created all together. And so it was small. It was just this little baby thing. And now it's everybody's.
Was there like a greater sense of confidence and drive in season two after you got all that positive recognition for season one?
Yeah, I think depends on who you ask. Definitely for me and for Brian and Keith, I think the show, we came back understanding our characters more and understanding the impact and who's watching this and why people are watching this. And so it is always better to come back into something knowing that, and you can sort of work with it and mold it better than the first season we were kind of just guessing and sort of just throwing ourselves at it. But I know for Donald and for the writers, they were feeling pressure to write something interesting but not the exact same. And so I think there was sort of, from production end of it, a little bit of sort of this, we're going to try and approach it a little differently and a little bit, we're not going to follow the exact kind of cutout that we had set up for the first season. And so I think people were still nervous and still wanting to create something new rather than sort of trace the old steps. And so there was confidence, but then there was also, I think, still kind of opening up new doors that hadn't really been explored before. So for me, I felt a lot more confident, but I know other parts of production, they still felt very experimental. So
yeah, and there definitely are experimental, unusual elements of the show, and season two certainly no exception. It can go from comedy to tragedy to sometimes the elements of the surreal. How is it balancing those tones in the subtle way the show does, and in some ways kind of enhance that in season two?
That's my favorite part of or one of my favorite parts of the show is sort of this mix of tones. I think that's super hard to pull off, but it's my favorite kind of work to watch in film and in television is something that sort of creates its own world. And I actually think in Atlanta, there aren't so many rules governing that world. And so it's easy to create, and it's easy to, you don't have to necessarily address plot holes or inconsistencies because it's never suggested that there are consistencies. And that's, I know definitely for writing, that's fun to play with. And I mean, Van doesn't so much exist in the surreal element. I actually think she's sort of more the grounding reality factor of the story that sort of brings Ern back into, this is your life that you have to conduct. And so, it is, I think it's really special though about the show to have this this element of of discussing people's lives and real versions of their lives and sort of nuance within their lives, while also something that also reflects real people's situations, whether that's sort of threshold to fame and wanting to create or not being able to, or being a parent, be co-parenting, stuff like that. Middle class, low middle class America. But I also think it's so fun that we get to sort of break out of that mold a little bit too. And I love that part of our show.
In addition to you're co-starring with Donald Glover, but of course he's also the creator. He writes, directs, produces. What's it like working with him in all those different capacities? Like how many different hats is he wearing in any given scene?
Yeah, he's actually surprisingly, at least on set, he's very relaxed. I mean, I know he's sort of always on production mode as well. He's checking emails and he's having discussions and rewriting scripts, and we go to him and we talk about sort of overarching themes in the show and what is our arc and what did he want to have represented as our arc and stuff like that. But he's really good at the responsibility when it's not his time to have that responsibility. So he's not sort of like backhand directing when Hero is doing his thing, and he's not kind of, I don't know, conducting when other people are doing that for him. I think he chose a team that he trusts and is letting the team have their input, and he doesn't seem to micromanage at all when we're on set, which is lovely and super kind of, he's very relaxed, and he's very he's so easy to play with as an actor too. He's just so receptive, and he's smart and quick, and so you can really kind of play with him. And it's this season I definitely did a lot more, I think, than the last season. I've just been just a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident, and it's great. It's great having the creator so close, because you can really kind of always access the primal version of the vision, and you can always truly ask, like, what was the intent? It's not so much guesswork, and also being able to work with sort of the essence of being able to act with the person who's embodying the vision. It's pretty cool, and I think it's rare to be able to do that.
And in season 2, you got to dive a lot deeper into their relationship, especially in the episode Helen, where Van takes Ern to a German festival, and their relationship kind of reaches a kind of a moment of reckoning. And you yourself were born in Germany, so what was it like bringing that aspect of yourself into the storyline and exploring those two characters deeper in that episode?
I felt really honored that he wrote that in, or I mean, I don't know. I'm using the word honored, but I just felt very I don't know, it's like a lovely personal touch. And he did that, I think, for all of us, where he wrote in sort of elements of who we actually are into the show. And that was super fun for me to just play with and explore. It is a important part for me, part of my life that most people don't really have access to at all because of the language barrier in that way. Like my world here in the States is American, but my relationship with my family in Germany and with my father and my relationship with Germany is very significant to me. And so it felt sort of like this, it's like a peek into a part of me that I think most people don't really get to experience, even if they're close, because my relationships here are American. And so I loved that, and I had so much fun with that. And it was nostalgic for me. We were just the outfits and stuff. I mean, it's like people are running around in dirndls and lederhosen, but like as a kid, I used to like dress up like that, and it was just it was this sort of play dress up kind of thing, and I thought it was such a lovely sort of dive also into Van and her identity, and sort of varying identities of blackness in America as well. You know, I think that being mixed, as kind of we all are, you know what I mean, in different ways, whether that's with different sort of minority backgrounds or black and white, or, you know, we are all you know, a mix. And I think, you know, that's a big part of who I am and a big part of my life. And so that was sort of a fun thing to explore and to include in the show for me. So yeah, I thought that was a really lovely, it was such a fun one to shoot. You know, it's a sad one, but
yeah, and it's such a complicated relationship between Van and Ern. You know, they have a child together, but their relationship status to each other is always kind of in flux. You know, and that episode seemed to, in some ways, seemed to be kind of a breakup episode. Yeah, but, you know, do you think they're better together or ultimately apart?
I think that they both individually, I think, need to actively figure out what is truly important to them. You know, I think Van is sort of in a transition phase in her life in terms of work and in terms of allowing herself to be let go from a situation like that. Like, I think that's a big decision to come to and have to work through, and to discover why she's choosing now to do that. I think that I'd love for them to be together, but I don't know. I don't think their relationship, they never started really with that intention. You know, the kid, having a child sort of happened to them, and they were kind of forced into just, I guess we got to keep hanging out. And I think it was almost a sort of like unfair sort of series of events that they couldn't ever explore what it was like to just sort of kind of date, you know. And so I don't know if I don't think they're ever going to really have that chance. I don't know if they're going to ever really get together. I think it's kind of like we wish it could work, but I don't think it ever really will be completely right. I think Van and Ern kind of do want different things and have different values about things. And I think ultimately that isn't really going to align, but who knows?
You also got to explore more Van in another big episode, Champagne Poppy, you know, in which Van and her friends go to a party at Drake's house, and she kind of realizes there's a certain artificiality to everything, including Drake himself is a cardboard cutout. What did you think about that episode when you read that script and shot it?
That was funny because that script actually kept changing as we were shooting it. Originally Drake was actually supposed to be a part of it, but like every day it was sort of dependent on his schedule, and every day it was like, is he gonna come? Is he not gonna come? And we were literally like handed scripts on set, like as it kind of kept changing, which that happens, but it's always kind of like, you're like, what storyline are we following now? Like, what does that kind of like pertain to or not? But I thought, it was so interesting because really that episode is kind of in a way all about Ern, and her kind of she wants independence, and she's like acting on her independence, and she wants to be contextualized within herself, and she wants to just be seen as Van and not have sort of the label of a mother or as like someone's girlfriend. But then she still is placing her value on other people's validation, and whether that's some sort of like likes on Instagram, or what, you know, whether that's wanting Earn to see what she's up to so that she can feel his reaction to that, or his like approval of that or disapproval of that. And so I think it's like sort of this interesting, like the actions are what she's wanting, but like the intention is still, she's still carrying what she was trying to let go, you know. And so I thought that was sort of like an interesting thing to play with. And it was also really fun sort of having women. That was something I talked to Donald about, actually, after we finished shooting the first season, is that I wanted to see Van more in the context of her friends, and what is she like with her friends, what are her friends like. And you know, on the first season, the episode that I had with my friend, with the drug test episode, I had such a good time working with like another woman's energy. And I think it brings out this other part of Van that we don't always see. And so that was really nice to have, like, I don't know, like a little girl power moment. And we had such a good time together, me and those three other women. Like, it was just such a, we really just kind of, it just worked. And so it was that was a fun one to do.
And in addition to Atlanta, this season you'll also be seen as Domino in the upcoming Deadpool 2, which opens in May. I can't imagine how drastically different that must be to shoot, you know, compared to something like Atlanta.
Yeah, it's completely different. It was a huge adjustment. You know, sort of in simplest terms, kind of also working with green screen and stuff. I'd never really done that, and you're really acting off of nothing. And a lot of times, you know, I haven't seen a cut of the movie yet, but I've seen some clips here and there as we've been working on it. And it's so interesting seeing, like, you're doing an action, and then you watch the sort of the edited version, and you're like, oh, that was like what was behind me. Like, you have no idea really, like, your function. And it's also kind of much more like a puzzle piece, you know. You have all these little tiny pieces that have to get put together, because there's so much, particularly because there's so much like action and things like that. It ends up being, a lot of the stuff has to be a little bit more clinical in how it's put together. And so it's sort of this interesting, like, Tetris, and it kind of is really sort of a true, like, practice in acting. And like, can you kind of, do you remember what that emotion was like that you sort of like carry into this sort of like, as you're sort of like just fitting puzzle pieces in, and like doing an insert here and doing an insert there. Also, like, storyline was sort of shifting and changing, and having to remember like which parts are we keeping, which parts are we not keeping. But then also, you know, it's interesting to sort of see you have so much more access to, because of, you know, the funding is different. And, you know, they make all these suits like by hand, and, you know, you have like, they're like 10 different Deadpool suits, and they're all handmade and hand measured. And as we're shooting, like, they adjust the suit to continue to fit you, because, you know, your body's changing as you're working out and stuff like that. So like every couple of weeks we would have to like take this in or let that out. And it's such sort of an interesting kind of, in ways, it's such a craft. You know, you have hundreds of people working on this. It's insane. Like, we had, on one day, I remember on a set, we had 400 people just on the set, like, because everybody had shit to do. And it's sort of like the mass of it is just so much larger, but then the art of it like details so much deeper. And you know, also sort of seeing Ryan kind of like, this has been, you know, this is such like a huge vision for him, and seeing him kind of work through that was so interesting, and really also inspiring to kind of like, he's really like putting his heart on the table. And, you know, it's such a vulnerable thing to put something together like this, you know what I mean? Because it's like, it's based off of your taste and your jokes and your like visual aesthetic. And him and David, the director, I think they worked really well together, and kind of both of them incorporating each of their individual sort of like feel to it. And, also just seeing Ryan kind of like working as Deadpool. He was so 100% committed the entire time, and was so professional. And, everybody was just there kind of like, I don't know, like, I feel like it was just such a cool kind of teamwork, full on experience. And, we all want like the best thing to come out. And, this was my first sort of like big encounter with like a studio film like this. And so I feel like a couple of people really took me under their wing, which was really lovely. I think Josh and I talked a bunch, and, it was such a, I don't know, sort of this like introduction into this kind of, I don't know. I never thought I would do something like that ever. I never, ever, ever thought that. I don't know. I've been acting like in community theater since I was a kid, but I never thought I'd be in a superhero movie. Like, that was never on my radar at all. So it's such I don't know, such a weird, interesting, fascinating, cool experience. Yeah.
It'll be interesting. Can you'll if they haven't come out already, I'm sure you're about to be an action figure.
Yeah. Well, the thing is I don't know how with Deadpool, because it's not so much for kids. I think they only really kind of do like little like adult collectible ones. I don't know if they'll really be selling them in like a Toys R Us, or although Toys R Us doesn't exist anymore, does it? Or
It's
do
coming
they?
to
It's coming to an end.
there will be people will order them on Amazon or
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's just been kind of weird, like sort of toys aside, just seeing all these like cartoons of yourself. You know what I mean? Like, because they keep marketing keeps coming out with things, but they don't always. Not always. They don't tell you when they do. And so you like come across a poster and you're like, oh, whoa, like I have no idea like what they're kind of like working on or not working on. It's sort of surprising actually how much, as an actor, I think you're kind of like, you're not really included in that element of it. And so that's been sort of a weird, I don't know, seeing yourself on like a poster and stuff. I think I keep forgetting what a very surreal and rare experience this is, because I feel like I kind of just sort of fell into it. I feel like I was just kind of living my life, and then this happened. But yeah, or like even like on social media, like fan art and stuff like that. So I saw somebody got a tattoo of me, which was like, what? Like, that's such a weird thing. Like, it's such a,
yeah, definitely stranger than the action figure thing.
Yeah, like that is so weird. And then I'm like, God, like I don't want to like disappoint this person. Like, if I have an interview and I say something shitty, like, oh God, like I'm on their body for the rest of their lives. Like, that is just crazy. But I think that's all going to be coming even more. I feel like I'm still kind of like in the shadow land of all of this, and when the movie comes out, I think I'm going to encounter a whole new world of, I think my life is going to be kind of different, and I'm with trepidation sort of anticipating it. And on my end, with my family and my boyfriend and my friends, we're all kind of like, all right, like, let's see what happens. We don't really know. So I think it'll be definitely interesting. It's not gonna be boring. If anything, it'll be interesting.
Well, congratulations on Atlanta and on Deadpool, and best of luck. Whatever your life is like post May 18th. Fingers crossed for all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, and this is just lovely. So, have a great rest of your day.
You too.